Hey everyone, it's me, Angela Walters, your favorite midnight quilter. And in this episode, I'm going to enjoy some slow stitching with an English paper piecing project that shows off some of my favorite fabrics. So, let's get to it. I know. The thought of me doing some hand piecing just seems crazy. But let's face it, we're all spending a little bit more time at home lately. So this year, I thought I would try out some new hobbies. Things I never thought I would try before. I tried crochet. That didn't turn out like I thought. I tried gardening. So much death. But English paper piecing turns out is one hobby that I think I'm gonna stick with. I can't believe how much fun it is, so if you've been thinking about giving English paper piecing a try, you definitely should. English paper piecing is a piecing method that involves stabilizing fabric pieces with templates before sewing them into intricate shapes. And because English paper piecing is done by hand, it's a great project to take with you on the go. So for the last few months, I've been working on a twist in time quilt using the new Eppiflex Templates designed by the Quilting patch. These templates are made out of thin, clear plastic. Thin enough to be bendable, but thick enough that I can't sew through it. They're heat resistant so I can iron them, and they're reusable. I can't wait to show you how to use these in a beautiful quilt. So for this quilt, I'm gonna be using these beautiful fabrics by Allison Glass. These are from her handiwork collection. I love the teals and the pinks, and I think it's such a beautiful color combination. First, I'd like to make a check mark on the templates that are directional. That'll let me know which side is the right side. If you cut a piece upside down, you'll have a piece that won't work with the rest of your quilt. Don't ask me how I know. I'm gonna start by cutting out strips that are at least a ½ inch bigger than the template itself. Since this is directional, I'm gonna stack all these fabrics right side up so I can cut through multiple pieces at once. Then I'll lay the template on top of the stack of fabric, making sure I have at least a ½ inch space all around the template. Then, using my ruler, I'm going to cut out the fabric. You need at least a ½ inch extra all the way around. Cutting through multiple fabrics will help this process go faster. Of course, if you're in the mood for some slow cutting, you can cut them out one at a time or even use your scissors. For this curved triangle piece, I'm going to use this beautiful pink tonal fabric. Like I did in the other step, I'm going to cut another strip that's at least a ½ inch bigger than the template. But as I cut them out, I'm going to alternate direction so I get most efficient use of my fabric. Again, being sure that there's at least a ½ inch extra all the way around those templates. For the third piece, I'm going to do the same thing with this gorgeous teal fabric. I'm just using my rotary cutter and my spinning mat because I happen to be at home. But if I wanted to take this on the go, I could use scissors to cut it out. The edges do not have to be precise. Now that I have my template pieces all cut out, it's time to baste them to the template. I'm going to use a glue stick to quickly baste the fabric to the template. I love how it holds it in place, but washes out when I'm done. Sure, I could raid my kids' school supplies and find some washable glue there, but I just love how this is smaller, which means I can be more precise with the placement, and the fact that it's blue lets me see where it's been applied. So I'm going to turn the fabric over, and I'm going to put a little dot of glue on the template just to help hold it in place. That way, as I'm gluing all the sides down, it doesn't shift on me. And what I'm going to do is run my glue stick just about a ½ inch away from that edge, and run it all the way down the plastic and into the fabric. I don't want to put glue on the very edge of the template because it makes it more difficult to sew through. That's something I didn't realize at first. I would be sewing pieces and realize that some of them were easy to sew and some of them were difficult. I just thought it was a random thing. Turns out I was putting the glue too close to the edge. Then I'm going to fold the fabric over and press it right into the glue. Once it's in place, I'm going to turn my piece and work along the next edge, placing a little glue on the template and then pressing the fabric into the glue. Now I'm just going to repeat that on the last side of the template. If I always start on the same edge and rotate in the same direction, my tails will nest when I go to sew them together. Now I have my first basted piece, and see this little tail that's kind of hanging out here? I'm going to leave those alone because eventually they'll be tucked on the inside of the quilt. Don't cut those off. Now I'm going to work on my next template piece. This one has a curved edge, but it's not difficult. I'm going to handle it the same way I did on the first piece, starting from one edge, applying the glue, and then pressing the fabric into place. I'm not going to lie, this kind of feels like arts and crafts time, but I'm loving it. Now for the bigger templates. They can be just a little bit trickier to handle, But if you've ever navigated a grocery store with one-way aisles, this will be a piece of cake. I'm definitely gonna be sure that I put a dot of glue on the really pointy end because this thing likes to move around on me. And then I'm gonna go about basting it just like I already have. The trickiest thing about this shape is that one of those sides goes down to a point, so it can be hard to know exactly where that plastic is. I'm just gonna make sure that it's coming around the plastic and getting pushed into place. So I'm gonna keep basting my pieces until I have a bunch of them put together, and then I'll show you how to assemble them into the blade. Even though I'm doing these in my quilting room, I can really do this anywhere. Family dinners, kids' movies, hiding in the bathroom, you know, wherever one happens to find oneself. I know that there's some quilters out there that like to go ahead and baste all their pieces before they start sewing them together, but I'm just not that kind of gal. I'm usually too excited to see how the pieces come together. So let me show you what that looks like. I know when you first look at this pattern, it can look a little crazy, but the good news is it's the same shape over and over and over again. So if you don't get it right the first time, you have 40 more times to figure it out. The wedge actually goes together like this. And so now I'm gonna start putting it together. My favorite thread for English paper piecing is micro quilter. So this is 100 weight thread. It's basically like angel hair. Trust me, I tried all my threads, all of them, and this is the best one for me. It's strong, it blends in, and it doesn't get all tangled up on the needle. Okay, let's talk about needles. These are my favorite. So they're big eye applique needles. And believe me, that big eye comes in really handy when you're trying to thread those needles. Okay, lastly, I'm gonna be using these Sew Tight magnets. So they're basically just magnets that will help hold them together. Okay, so now that we know the tools I'm using, I'm gonna start by putting my pieces right sides together. I will magnet them in place, and I'll just help hold them so that my hands don't get, I don't want my fingers getting sore. And I'm going to thread my needle, or have one of my children thread my needle, depending on how dark it is. And then I'm gonna just ever so carefully sew those two pieces together. And what I wanna do is I just wanna grab just the fabric, just a bit of it, and I want it to be a 90-degree angle this way and this way. I don't want it tilting up and down, and I don't want it tilting to the side. I'm going straight through it. And I'm gonna pull the needle all the way through until I have about 1/2 inch left. I'm just gonna do a knot to help secure it. So I'm gonna put the needle back through the fabric, doing the same thing. I'm gonna pull it through till I have a circle or a little loop right here. And I'm gonna go through the loop, and you'll see I'll have another loop form right here. I'm gonna go through that loop. Basically, I'm just making a knot. Now I have that little tail right here, and I'm just gonna kind of tuck it down, and as I sew, it'll help hold that in place. So I'm gonna keep making my stitches, just going through those pieces of fabric. But here's the $1 million question, right? How many stitches should you put per inch? I'm gonna do about 16 stitches per inch. This should be pretty secure because this one piece of thread is the only thing holding these two together. Basically, we wanna get it nice and secure. And I'm just gonna keep going, working my way along that seam until I get to the end. Now when I get to the end of my segment, I'm gonna do the same thing I did in the beginning, doing that double loop just to tie that knot to secure it. Then I have my first piece together. I'm gonna secure the next piece here, my pink piece. Use my little magnet to secure it. All right, so I'm just gonna keep sewing along this until I get it secure, and then we'll see what our first wedge looks like. So only 2 short seams, and I've got my first section done. And I just have to do that several more times to make my first outer ring. And we can start to see how this quilt's gonna come together. I'm loving that twisting effect that it gets. So assembling this is easy. I'm just gonna sew the blades together in groups of 2 and then sew the groups together. I'm gonna take my 2 blades and I'm gonna put them right sides together. And I want those blue corners right here to match up. One side's definitely gonna extend out further than the other, and that's fine. I'm just gonna go until I hit the edge of my plastic and then stop. Okay, so once I get to the end of my segment, I have these 2 put together, and even though it's hanging off weird, I know it's gonna be fine because I've got to the end of my plastic piece. After I've sewn all the pairs together, I have my first outer ring. Doesn't it look amazing? I'm not gonna lie, I'm kind of proud of myself for my first English paper piecing project. The inner ring goes together exactly the same way. The wedges are just a lot tinier. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna actually piece this ring into the center. But instead of working my way all the way around in a circle, I'm gonna do a couple pieces across from each other. And that's just gonna help make sure it's in place before I start going. What I don't want to happen is I don't want to start here and then end up all the way back at the end and have too much or too little. Well, that's gonna take a minute, so I'm gonna get going on that and I'll show you what it looks like when I'm done. The center is finished, and while it took a little while to complete, I love the final effect. Now I sewed that inner circle in just the way I said by working on opposite edges and then filling it all in, and I did the same with the center circle, working from one side and the other to help kind of tack it in place and then going around. And the pattern says that you can actually turn this into a cushion or a round wall hanging, but I want a little bit more room to play with this, so I'm going to put it on a bigger piece of background. But before I do that, I have to actually remove those templates. I've left these templates in till the very last moment. It gives me that nice crisp edge to make sure I can get it all pieced together. Now when removing the templates, I'm just going to carefully peel back that fabric, just a little bit, being very gentle with it, and then just work the template out like this. Definitely don't want to leave it in there because that will make the machine quilting not very fun. So I'm going to take out all those pieces and then lay it on the background fabric. I think this dark charcoal gray from Handiwork is going to really make that center circle pop. And I think I'm going to have a lot of fun machine quilting this in the outside. And I'm actually going to fold these little tips under and applique the circle to the fabric. So I'm going to get this done and I'll be right back. And this is done. Now all I have to do is quilt it, and I'm actually going to quilt this on my long arm. So let's get to it. Now I know I normally quilt on my sewing machine, and I love doing that. For this quilt, I'm actually going to use my long arm. I've went ahead and picked out the perfect coordinating threads for this quilt. Beautiful teal and purple are really pulling out some of my favorite colors in the fabric. Plus, I know it's going to look great on that gray background that I've picked. So I'm going to get this on the machine and start quilting. And this quilt is finished. The Twist in Time quilt definitely puts a twist on English paper piecing. Get it? I had a lot of fun adding some different texture with the quilting. I love how the charcoal fabric really makes that ring pop off of there. To see all their other patterns or to get the kit to make this quilt, check out the link in the description box below. I'll be back next week with another episode of the Midnight Quilter. Until then, happy quilting.